By 1991, the ever-popular Fleetwood Mac had recorded 23 albums. But age was not mellowing the rockers as they approached the quarter-century mark. They were again in complete disarray. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks had both quit, as had their lead guitarist Rick Vito. The only long-time remaining members were founders Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and his now ex-wife Christine. And even she would no longer go on tour. Over the years, Fleetwood Mac had frequently pulled back from the brink at the very last minute, and the current crisis would be no exception. This time, however, the catalyst for their reforming would be no less than the new president of the United States, Bill Clinton. Throughout his campaign, Clinton had used Mac's old standard, "Don't Stop," as his theme song, and he asked the band to play it at his 1993 inauguration. For the celebration concert, Fleetwood Mac introduced guitarist Dave Mason, formerly of Traffic, and the daughter of 60s pop artist Bonnie and Delaney, vocalist Becca Bramlett.
Becca, when I think we were hanging out one night in Malibu, Mick's studio.
And I got up, I used to get up all the time and sing with my dad. And they were there, and Fleetwood Mac, and
Mick went, wow.
I got a phone call saying that, while Fleetwood Mac isn't doing their thing, Mick has this hiatus band called The Zoo. Would I come?
Well, I think she and her mother are both incredible singers, just incredible, They've got that R&B thing, that gospel thing, and it seems so effortless to them. Wonderful.
The Becca coming in is another example, I think, of Mick Fleetwood's resourcefulness. It was his resourcefulness that said, well, let's put Fleetwood Mac together with a great, blonde, cute girl singer and with some other people, and let's go out there and do it and see what happens, and that's Mick.
Mick Fleetwood had an uncanny talent for putting the right people in the right places. Never front and center himself, he was always more than happy to sit in the background.
Why wouldn't he be happy? Just think, I'm a drummer, and I have all these hits, and I'm making all this money, and I'm not writing anything, and it's happening all around me.
Mick Fleetwood, I'm not a music critic, so I'm not one to talk about his technique or his virtuosity or skill or anything. I think it speaks a lot, though, about him that he was able to be the foundation, part of the rhythmic foundation of a band that went through so many different kinds of music through all these many years. So I think that says a lot about his skill.
Well, I could tell you a few things. No. Mick's the sort of big brother or paternal figure, however you want to classify him. But he's a very charismatic fellow. First of all, he's about 6'7" or something like that. He's a big guy. So his presence alone, when he walks in any room, heads are going to turn anyway, let alone you realize it's Mick, Mick's always the guy he's the idea man, He's always comes up with, let's try this, this would be great, let's go out and look at this person, or, let's try this or that, and it's infectious.
Now back in the studio after 3 years, they recorded a new album, Time.
We had a lot of cool, eclectic ideas going, like me and Billy had more southern rocky, kind of country-ish, more flavor-ish kind of stuff going on. Mick was just totally happy to be 100% always involved, and John was just freaking me out, with the bass parts that he was coming up with. I'd always want to be there when John was playing the bass parts, because it was just like, what? This little white English fella, man, you're just going, you are the soulfullest cat ever, dude, wow. And it was, I just remember, it was great, yeah.
It took Warner Brothers nearly a year to release the Time album, and they provided virtually no promotional support for the ensuing tour. Exhausted, disillusioned, and frustrated, Fleetwood Mac disbanded for the 4th time. But only months later, Mick Fleetwood announced that he and John McVie were again working with Lindsey Buckingham, Christine McVie, and Stevie Nicks. Fleetwood Mac's greatest ever lineup were back together once again. The release of their new album, The Dance, was preceded by a massively successful MTV special, and both the album and 37-city reunion tour returned Fleetwood Mac to center stage of the pop world. Just as the tour came to an end in '98, Fleetwood Mac was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Included in the induction was not only the band's most famous lineup, but earlier members Peter Green, Jeremy Spencer, and Danny Kerwin, who had all contributed to more than 3 decades of Fleetwood Mac's unique sound.
Well, look at the history. You know, it's been around for 40 years this year. This is the 40th anniversary. So, you know, they're wonderful people. Mick Fleetwood is a wonderful guy. He's still somebody I enjoy hanging out with and playing with.
It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing their fans stick with him as long as they do, too. I mean, Stevie's fans are just, you know, diehard. Fleetwood Mac fans are. I mean, they're fans forever. I mean, and you know, you hit the stage with those guys, and it's pretty wild.
In 2003, the band released their first album in 8 years, the 18-track CD, Say You Will. This album was also the first time Lindsey Buckingham had joined them in the studio since 1987.
You see, I'm glad they made their last album, even though it didn't have any big hits in it, because Peacemaker became the first single to make the Billboard Hot 100 sheerly on the basis of download. There was no physical record. So they're in the history books for something which to them is minor. But I like that.
After more than 40 years in the music business, the only founding members still with the band are Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. Over the decades, 14 other musicians and vocalists have worked with them. Together, they produced 26 albums and sold more than 100 million records, making Fleetwood Mac undoubtedly one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time.
I would say, overall, they were the purveyors of very, very commercial, good music.
When you're flipping and press and seek, and a Fleetwood Mac song comes on, you don't keep pressing. You listen to that song. I don't know anybody who doesn't. That's got to say something.
I think when people are reminded about them and about a few songs from over the course of their history, then they go, yeah, that is one amazing achievement. That is a great band, and those are some of my favorite songs. So that's a pretty good legacy to have.
It was just an interesting band, and I think reflected the times and the musical times, and full of strong personalities that had a lot of interesting things to say.
Well, that's tough. Dynasty.
Honesty would be the word. I do think that they mean everything they play and sing. I've seen it.
Sad is the word. Sad because I would give it all up for Peter Green to be well, all of it, if I could do that, but I can't.
Rumors. Not only because that's the name of their biggest selling album, but because the biggest interest in the group concerns rumors. What is Stevie Nicks really up to? What are Buckingham and Nicks onto together? Where was Peter Green's head at? What did happen to those original guys? Rumors. This is a group where there are multiple mysteries.